Welcome to the next show. It's our third season, unimaginably, and I'm here with Monique van Dusseldorp from Amsterdam. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
It's fantastic. When we started the next conference show back in 2020, It was a replacement for our conference, or it was meant to be a replacement. And now it's more of an add-on because we were lucky enough to host the conference in a small version.
Yeah, we want to have these conversations all year long, basically. So it's interesting. It's an interesting time. Digitally, the world is so creative right now and so much is happening. So we need to keep that conversation going.
Definitely. And one person that we love to have conversations with is our keynote in residency, David Mattin. He's in London and we welcome him from London today. And we want to talk with him about what exactly?
Well, Web3, but also the cooperation side of Web3. So not so much the metaverse and the NFTs, although they're part of this big new game, but also how people are getting together in new kinds of ways.
So we will have a lively conversation as usual with David, who is based in London. And I'm handing over to you.
Thanks, Ina, for that amazing introduction. And hi, Monique. It's so great to be back with you all. It's great to be back on the next show. This talk is called New Cliques on the Block. And I want to talk to you today about the coming collision between an emerging technology and a powerful fundamental human need. I'm talking about the technology that is Web3, perhaps the primary technological shift, one that we were all obsessed with last year. And as for the fundamental human need, I'm talking about status, the eternal human quest for status. And at the heart of my message to you today is that those two things are colliding. We are going to see in 2022 and beyond the collision of Web3 technologies and the eternal human quest for status. And that is going to offer innovators, professionals, people like you, amazing and powerful opportunities. And I want to talk to you about those opportunities. I want to talk to you about this emerging trend that is the collision between Web3 and status. Before we dive into the details and before we start to talk about those opportunities, let's just take a quick step back and think about what trends are, because that's going to be really useful for everything that follows. So a lot of you know that I write a newsletter about trends, technology and society called New World, Same Humans. I'm obsessed with trends. The trends reshaping human behaviours, mindsets, expectations. And trends in the end are a way of dealing with, are a way of making sense of a changing world. We know that we've lived through a whole lot of change in this decade so far. And here's the thing about all this change. It can throw you off balance. It's very hard to know how to make sense of it all. It's very hard to plot your next move, your next strategy or innovation when you live with such rapid, apparently chaotic change. But there is a simple, powerful core truth that can enable you to start to make sense of that change, to see meaningful new directions, to see meaningful new trends within the change. And here is that truth. Yes, there's lots of change, but we are still the same old humans with the same old basic human needs. Okay, so humans are motivated by a set of basic needs, things like status, value, security. They are eternal. Fundamentally, they don't change decade on decade, even century on century. And the reason I'm telling you this is that trends are made of those two building blocks. On the one hand, change. On the other hand, basic human needs. In fact, to be more specific about it, I say this. I say that new trends emerge when some change in the world, often a new technology, unlocks a new way to serve a basic human need. Okay, that's what trends are all about. New ways to serve age-old human needs. And that's what's happening right now with Web3. Web3, perhaps, as I said at the beginning, the primary technological shift that we're living through right now, something that a lot of people are very excited about. And the promise of a Web3 internet is an internet built on public blockchains. Blockchains, as you know, allow decentralized collaboration and transaction, blockchains fuel Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. They fuel NFTs. And the promise of a Web3 internet is the promise of an internet built on blockchains, an internet that is decentralized, that strips power away from these huge centers of power, these massive technology companies that we've seen evolve over the last decade or so, and hands power to all of us, decentralizes power. A Web3 internet is about power to the people. It's about power to the crowd. But this emerging technology is colliding now with a powerful human need. And it's a surprising human need, because it's not the human need to be a part of the crowd. It's the need to stand out from the crowd. I'm talking, as I said right at the top, about status, the eternal human quest for status. And look, when I talk about status in this context, I'm not talking about showing off. That can be a little part of it, but it goes far deeper than that. When I'm talking about status, I mean the need to be recognized by our fellow human beings, the need to be seen by other people and be seen as something meaningful. That is a deep, fundamental human need, and it's part of all our lives and always will be. And what we're seeing now is Web3 intersecting with that. And one of the primary ways we saw that playing out in 2021 is through NFT art. Non-fungible tokens allow unique ownership of digital entities, and last year that swept through the world of art. 2021 was the year of NFT art, and we saw some crazy prices being paid. This is Vignesh Sundaresan, the man who paid $69 million for the digital artist Beeple's NFT artwork every day the first 5,000 days. Now, NFT art sounds very shiny, very new, somewhat complicated, but at heart, this is an age-old, very familiar status play. It's about the status play that is elite art ownership. It's the same kind of status play that drove the Medici family in medieval Europe to amass a huge art collection of their own. It's about saying, look, yes, I'm rich, but I'm more than that. I'm cultured, I'm a patron of the arts, I'm enlightened too. Okay, whether it's the Medici family hundreds of years ago or it's NFT art right now, art ownership has always been a form of status play, and we're just seeing it happen in a new way now. So where are we heading beyond this? Well, NFTs will also empower the rise of virtual status symbols. We're all familiar with physical consumer status symbols, you know, the Gucci handbag, the sustainable sports car. What we're going to see emerging now is virtual status symbols, virtual objects, the virtual handbag, the virtual pair of trainers that people walk into virtual worlds with and use as methods of status display. Okay, and NFTs are going to empower ownership of those kinds of virtual status symbols too. This, by the way, is Artifact, the US creative agency best known for their NFT trainers. They sold $7 million worth of NFT trainers in 11 minutes, I think it was, last year. And just in November, it was announced they've been acquired by Nike. So we're going to see NFT virtual status symbols. That's another powerful way that Web3 is intersecting with this eternal human quest for status. But I want to look in this talk even beyond that, even beyond objects, virtual objects as status symbols. And I want to look at this because I think this is a hugely powerful part of where we're heading. Decentralized communities, Web3 communities that unlock new forms of collaboration and creativity and more, all in the name of status. And look, we even saw a glimpse of that in 2021. If you look at CryptoPunks, these little NFT icon pictures of digital characters. I think the most expensive CryptoPunk was sold in 2021 for $11 million. Now, what is that about? It's not really just about owning that little JPEG of the CryptoPunk. It's that when you buy that CryptoPunk, you join an ultra high value community. It's a community including people like Serena Williams, Jay-Z. And when you get to display that CryptoPunk on your Twitter profile, you get to show the world that you're a part of that community too. And it's a community that talks to one another, that supports one another, that creates with one another. It's access to the community that you're really paying all that money for, and the status hit that allows you. That's just one dimension of this intersection between Web3 and status, but we're going to see that play out across all kinds of dimensions in 2022 and beyond. And that's what I want to talk about now. That's what I want to drill down into for the rest of this talk. That's what this trend, new cliques on the block, is all about. It's about this intersection of Web3 decentralized communities and status, the eternal human quest for status. Let me show you some examples, because that's really going to bring this trend to life and start to enable you to think about the opportunities that are in this for you. Here is a great first example to start with. This is Constitution DAO. In November of last year, Constitution DAO put in a $40 million bid for a rare 1787 copy of the US Constitution. Now, you guys know a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization, and Constitution DAO drew in 17,000 people, most of whom put in just a few $100 to mount this bid. Now, look, there's a couple of things to say about this innovation straight away. I'm not showing it to you because I think it's new to you. I'm sure most of you saw the news about Constitution DAO. I'm also not showing it to you because I'm saying you have to love it as an idea, as an innovation. In fact, Constitution DAO was quite controversial. It attracted some criticism. Some people said of all the things that they could put the money towards, why are they trying to buy this rare historical document? It's a waste of money. Why don't they give the money to charity? All of those criticisms are valid. But there's a deeper underlying point I want to make with this example, Constitution DAO. And there's actually a deeper underlying point about looking for trends too. Now look, we human beings are judgment machines. When we see something new, we immediately want to judge it. Like, yes, this is great. This is awful. I love this. I hate this. That's fine. That's human nature. That will never change. But the first thing when it comes to looking for trends is to take a step back from that initial judgment and just ask some deeper underlying questions about the innovation you're looking at. And in particular, two deep underlying questions. Is there anything new happening in the world right now that is fueling this innovation, that is making this innovation possible? And the second question is, what powerful human need, if any, is this innovation tapping into? And when we ask those questions about Constitution DAO, we get two extremely interesting answers, because there is something new happening in the world right now that's making Constitution DAO possible. Clearly, that's Web3s, that's DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. And it is tapping into a very interesting fundamental human need, and that's the quest for status, which motivates a huge amount of human behavior. So really, this example, this innovation, is a signal to us. It's a signal that decentralized communities are unlocking a new form of status behavior, or really an old form of status behavior, but they're unlocking a new manifestation of it. It's the same kind of status behavior that motivated this man, the billionaire hedge fund manager Ken Griffin, to bid $43 million at Sotheby's for this rare copy of the US Constitution, and he's the man ultimately who won the auction. Ken Griffin is questing after that status in a traditional, familiar way, by being a super rich person with a huge amount of money to spend. Constitution DAO are questing after it in a new way, but it's that same status hit. It's the status hit of saying, look, yes, I'm extremely rich in the case of Ken Griffin. I have money, but I'm much more than that. I'm cultured, I'm enlightened, I'm a student of history, I preserve historical documents for the whole community. Ken Griffin was questing after that status in an old way. Constitution DAO were questing after that status just in a new way. Okay, so this is a powerful example of how Web3 and decentralized communities will unlock this new form of status behavior. In this case, it's about preservation of historical documents. It's about movements, the status of being part of a movement, that we the people should own the US Constitution. But we'll see this collision between decentralized communities and status play out across all kinds of other dimensions too. Let's have a look at another really powerful dimension, that's creativity. Now this example is Loot. Loot is an NFT-based platform and community based around a fantasy role-playing game. Now that sounds very convoluted, so let me explain. What Loot did is use a random text generator to generate 8,000 what they call bags of loot. And the bags of loot are simply lists of words, lists of items that you commonly find in fantasy role-playing games. Things like magician's robes, swords, cloaks, suits of armour, and so on. And they sold these bags of loot as NFTs. So if you bought one of these NFTs, what you bought was nothing more than this, nothing more than a list of words. But again, of course, it's not just about buying the list. It's really about buying access to the community. Because if you buy one of these bags of loot, if you buy one of these lists, you get access to the loot community, and then you can start to collaborate, to co-create with that community. And we've seen an explosion of creativity happen around loot across the last few months. So people started to form guilds. All the people who owned the divine robes item, you can see that second on the list, formed a guild together and started to do creative projects with one another. Some people built characters around their list of items and developed stories for those characters. There's now a loot newspaper. So loot has become a creative universe of its own, and access to the universe comes by being part of this decentralized community, buying one of these NFTs. And it's a leaderless community. No one has control. No one knows where it's going. It's being created in real time by the community as they go along. Now, look, there's obviously a big fun dimension to that. That's just fun. That's great. There's a status hit too. It's the status that comes with creativity of being part of this cutting edge creative community that's doing something really new and interesting. Here's another brilliant example at the intersection of decentralized communities, creativity and status. This is Botto. Botto is the world's first AI autonomous artist. It's the creation of a brilliantly interesting German AI artist called Mario Klingmann. And I have a quick video of him to explain how Botto works. So just take a look at this and then we'll come back and talk. Have a look.
This Madrid gallery is displaying a range of brightly colored abstract artworks. But these pieces were not created by a human artist. They are the work of an artificially intelligent system called Botto. Botto was built by an international group of engineers and artists. It uses algorithms to analyze millions of works of art and then produces its own.
That's how Botto creates its art. It creates a sentence, feeds that into a neural network and gets an image back. And that neural network has seen more art, more images than any single human being around.
Every week, around 350 new images are created, which are then shared with a community of 5,000 users.
Okay, so you see how it works. Every week, Botto is creating hundreds of pieces of art. The AI that fuels Botto is creating those works of art, hundreds of pieces every week. And the community each week votes on one piece to go to the art auction platform Super Rare and be auctioned. Now look, anyone can join the community of humans around this AI, around Botto, that gets to vote on which piece of art goes to be auctioned. All you have to do is buy a Botto crypto token. And the idea is that as Botto becomes better known, as its work becomes more valuable, the value of the token will rise, and you as a holder of that token, you will profit from that. So this is a powerful example, again, at the intersection of decentralized communities, creativity, status, and profit. It's those same old Medici vibes. It's that same old quest for status, just playing out in a very new way. This is Seen Proceed. It's the second work of Botto's that went for auction on Super Rare. And by the way, the word on the street is that Snoop is the person who bought the artwork I just showed you. It was called Seen Proceed. Snoop is the NFT Medici. Okay, you're getting the idea now, I think. I'm showing you examples that are about this intersection of Web3 decentralized communities and status, and we're just going to see all kinds of different dimensions on that collision. Here's a really simple example, Dinner DAO. It's a decentralized community that's all about high-value dinner parties. You get access to the community by purchasing a Dinner DAO NFT, and they use the funds that the sale of the NFTs create to buy for themselves dinners in exclusive locations all around the world. We all get the status hit that comes with being part of an exclusive dinner party club, of meeting interesting people, of going to interesting places. That's a form of status display, and Dinner DAO is a decentralized community that's just unlocking that very familiar status behavior, but in a whole new way. There's one final dimension to this I want to look at, and it's the collision between all of this that we've talked about and another massive technology trend that's coming down the pipeline, and that is the metaverse, the rise of virtual reality and augmented reality worlds that people will step inside and have meaningful experiences inside and live some of their lives inside. We're going to see the intersection of decentralized communities, status, and these virtual worlds too, and that's going to be a hugely powerful combination in the years ahead. Just to get a glimpse of where we're heading, of how that might look when we finally get there, take a look at this example. This is Snapchat. They recently partnered here in London with a charity called the Black Cultural Archives. And what they did together is create an AR installation in London's Trafalgar Square, an iconic destination. And that AR installation was all about London's Black history. And you could go to the destination, you could use your phone to experience this installation, have this experience in augmented reality on your phone. Now, at the moment, augmented reality is totally screen bound. You have to look at it through a device. But just imagine how much more powerful it's going to be when you can look at it like this, when you can look at it through a pair of augmented reality glasses, and truly you have a digital layer, an augmented reality layer, not just on a phone, but laid over the world around you through, mediated by a pair of glasses like this. That's the kind of powerful technology we're heading towards. And then we're going to see an explosion of augmented reality worlds that people step inside. People will be able to personalize their experience of their own city, and people will start to join communities, decentralized communities that are built around these augmented reality worlds. You'll have a decentralized community that creates a steampunk London, a decentralized community that creates a Victorian London. You'll be able to choose between those communities, and access to those communities will come, as we've seen, via buying a crypto token or buying an NFT, and the community will vote and shape together in real time the nature of the augmented reality world that they're stepping inside. That's some way off yet. We're looking further into the future now, but this intersection of Web3, status, and the coming metaverse is going to be really powerful. So look, I would love you to think about what all this means for you. How can you tap into this emerging trend, this intersection between decentralized communities and status? Think about movements and experiences. Think about Constitution DAO, the way they built a movement around this idea that we the people should own the US Constitution. Think about creativity. Think about Botto and how they've built a decentralized community around this AI artist. And yes, think longer term about the metaverse. How does all of this intersect with the rise of virtual reality and augmented reality worlds? Take those ideas away and apply them. This trend isn't just to know about, you should do something with it. Build a community of your own, a decentralized community of your own in 2022 that offers your consumers status in a new way, taps into an age-old status behavior, but allows them to display it in a new way. If you're tapping into that trend, and if you're tapping into that fundamental human need, you're in a really powerful place. I hope that quickly along the way in this talk, you've just seen the beginnings of a new way of seeing the world around you too, a trend watcher's way of seeing the world around you. We all see a ton of new stuff all the time, lots of innovations, products, services, campaigns. Whenever you see something new, just ask yourself, is there something new in the world making this innovation possible now? And what fundamental human need is this innovation tapping into? Okay? And if you take those questions with you and ask them when you see new product services campaigns in the world around you, you can start to spot new trends of your own. You can bring them back to your team and you can innovate around them. You can learn more about the trends I'm tracking and about this trend indeed through my newsletter, newworldsamehumans.com. But that is more than enough from me for this moment. Thanks so much for listening. Back to you, Monique in Hamburg.
Well, thank you so much. It's not enough at all. We have so many questions now. So let me give you a few. Now, first of all, this promise of this decentralized world that we're entering now that we have all this new tech underlying it, how decentralized is it? Because there's a lot of criticism of Web3 that in the end, it's sort of a small gang of companies running it or sharing it or promoting this idea, and that it might not be as decentralized as we want it to be or expect it to be?
Yes, and I think those criticisms are very valid and they're very concerning. I mean, everyone says, and I've said it myself, oh, Web3 and the emergence of blockchains, it's reminiscent of these early days of the web, when the web pioneers dreamed of an internet that would democratize everything and hand power to the people, and it would create this incredible new democratized world. And it is somewhat reminiscent of those days, or what I imagine those days were like, because even I'm not quite old enough to have been a participant in them. But we all know how those days ended up. They ended up with a few huge platforms, a few huge centers of power, and that dream never was realized. And I think the very real concern around Web3 is that it's going to be the same journey. And you see already activity and power centralizing around a few big platforms like, for example, OpenSea, the big NFT trading platform. And that's very difficult. And I think, to be honest, we're so deep in Web 2 and its structures and its mindsets as well. And that's a very centralized internet that my concern is that we will find it very hard to break free of those structures and those ways of thinking. And that Web 3 will end up becoming another chapter of a deeply centralized internet that hands more power and great riches as well to a very, very small number of people. I mean, this very quickly gets very philosophical, and it's absolutely fascinating, and it's going to be fascinating to see it play out. But I have to admit, I'm not as optimistic as I maybe once was that Web3 will be, in the end, truly decentralizing and truly empowering of the great mass of people out there. I think individual projects can be. I think it's very interesting that a project like Constitution DAO gives thousands and thousands of people out there a chance to be part of a Sotheby's auction in a way they never would have been able to before, and bid against someone like Ken Griffin, who has billions of dollars. That's interesting. Something new is going on. But how it's going to turn out is difficult, and I don't think it's a sure bet that it will be the decentralized utopia that we're being told.
Now, let me be devil's advocate here, because we also assume that decentralized is in fact what we want most of all, because it assumes that we can take away power from some organizations that are too powerful. But of course, if we start, and we already are doing this, living so much of our lives digitally, in digital networks and digital worlds, and it is completely decentralized, that means that there is absolutely no central authority to protect or to establish rules or to, make sure that some things don't happen. I mean, if we are completely decentralized and everything is also completely, secure and unshareable with anybody else, what world will we end up in? Nobody will know what to do when things go wrong.
Yes, I think that again is a very valid criticism, and my instincts are to be suspicious of the promise and the idea that kind of decentralization does deliver us into a utopia. I mean, the story, and again, you go back to the early web pioneers, and they talked about democratization, and they talked about, knocking down the gatekeepers and this great new open world. And insofar as we did knock down the gatekeepers, and I'm thinking particularly of media here, you can ask how great that's turned out. I mean, it turns out that although a gate-kept media, a very controlled, centralized media, has its obvious problems and it's clearly elitist, what it does is control the flow of information in some quite useful ways. And it was guided by a culture of truth, and editors at newspapers, old-fashioned things now, editors at newspapers and editors on broadcast television channels, on the whole, were people who were trying to abide by a culture of truth. And now we just have an information free-for-all, and we've seen some of the implications of that, and it's not fantastic. So there are some good reasons to have centralization, and there are some good reasons to have gatekeepers. That is true, and we've learned that across the last couple of decades. So now, exactly as you say, is even more decentralization, is total decentralization what we want? I think my counter argument, my sort of, I agree with the instinct of that question, but my counter argument, even further devil's advocate, if you like, is yes, but just look at the abject failure of the centralized institutions we have in place to protect us when it comes to the internet. We have seen before our eyes the accumulation of basically the most incredible accumulation of power over human beings in Facebook and Google that we've ever seen in human history. And there has been no response. Unfortunately, politics and our big institutions, our political systems, simply were not able to cope with or understand, let alone respond to, this incredible accumulation of power over the lives of billions of people. So those kinds of institutions are not coming to the rescue. We need something radically new. And perhaps we'll find that radically new future in some form of massively decentralized power, and perhaps new institutions and new forms of centralization eventually emerge out of that. But just hoping that the institutions we have now, the US Senate, and they bring Mark Zuckerberg there and ask him, how do you make money? And he says, well, we run adverts. That's the level they're on. That's not working. So we need something new. But this is risky, just saying we need something new, so let's try this, is very risky. But we're in a whole new world and we don't understand where it's going. So we have to try something new.
Let's talk about the something new. I mean, the something new. I consider myself reasonably digitally literate. And, of course, so I have my, set up a MetaMask wallet, and I bought some bottles because I wanted to try this out. And, I go through the whole process. And my God, it's difficult. It's not easy. There's a huge threshold at the moment whereby, these new elites that are forming, it's not just an elite of having money, it's also an elite of getting through this, understanding this, and then starting, being the first at something and trading it. And where do you see that going? It feels a little bit like, as you say, the beginning of the internet, where sort of an in-crowd elite who understands new systems gets in there first, and it's all fun and games. And then when the masses join, it gets very, very difficult, and the crowd moves on and on and on. And now we're in NFT land.
Yeah, and this question of difficulty and understanding is very linked to the questions around centralization that you were asking before, because I think ultimately, if you look again at the very early days of the internet, and it is so fascinating that we're making this constant comparison between this new version of the internet and the very early internet. It shows how important this Web3 revolution could be. But if you look at the very early days of the internet, it was something for nerds. It was not easy to interact with. If you wanted to publish, for example, an article online, that was difficult. Very few people in 1993 knew how to do that. And then organizations come along that say, we are going to make this easy for you. We will build interfaces for you. We will let anyone publish online or share a photo online or all these things people want to do. And that's how you end up with massive centralization. So yes, at the moment, crypto and Web3 feels very technical. It is quite technical and quite confusing. It's hard for outsiders to understand. But the danger is, as we see the emergence of platforms that make it much easier and much more accessible, that's what causes the centralization. So we have to tread very carefully across that journey. Like, we want more and more people to be involved, because that's where the power of decentralization emerges, when you have lots of people involved. But at the same time, we have to try to resist this process whereby we hand all the power to a few platforms who are making it easy for people to get involved. But again, this is another dimension of how complex.
Oh, well, I got through in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it can be done. It can be done.
Yeah, but it's hard work. I mean, maybe lastly, I think it's super interesting that the creative crowd has jumped on this, and there's also something underlying. I mean, there's two things. First of all, I'm just fascinated by it all, and I'm fascinated by the intangibles, the things that now can be minted as NFTs and are considered valuable. I mean, there's a football club in the Netherlands, PSV, and they sold the moment they won the championship many years ago as well. They sold the moment. I mean, how can you sell a moment of the victory? But the point is, somebody wanted to have it and then sold it on. So it's the secondary market that now exists that sort of creates the market. And the secondary market can only exist because it's an NFT and there's a contract in there that if it gets sold on, the original creator also still gets some money. So the fact that this technical thing suddenly exists that assures you of the secondary market value coming back to the original originator suddenly makes a market out of things that I would never have thought could be seen as, I own the victory of PSV way back. Man, how does that work? But it's true.
I mean, it doesn't work, and this is why people are. It does and it doesn't work, and I'll explain what I mean by that. And this is why there's this layer of confusion around NFTs and whether they're really meaningful, because NFTs are just a way of attaching a unique code to a piece of digital information, and then you can purchase that code, and only you have that code, and it's tied specifically to a piece of digital information, like a digital picture, for example, a picture, a JPEG, or a pair of virtual sneakers if you want to get a bit more complicated. And then you are the owner of that piece of digital information. It's just about linking you to a piece of digital information in a uniquely identifiable way so that no one else can argue with it. And then you are the owner of that. But to say that you can then sell the moment that a football team won a certain championship, that is just a piece of marketing speak. And look, I mean, it works, like someone's bought it, but you could have done that with physical photographs. You could have taken a photograph of that moment and said, okay, this is an edition of one photograph. We're never going to print any more of these photographs. We'll just have one photograph. This is the photograph of the moment we won. So if you buy this photograph, you're buying the moment that we won the championship. You're not really. You're buying a photograph, but a very valuable, limited edition of one photograph from the proper football club. So, okay, yeah, it's valuable, but it's the photo you're buying, not the moment, right? Okay, and that's where people are starting to get confused and go, how are these guys saying you can buy a moment in time and everything?
But it is similar to digital sneakers or things like this. I mean, the fact that people attach value to it make it valuable, and the most important thing is that you can show it off online in this digital world we live in, right? Because at one point I have a very small art collection of graphic design and so forth, and I actually researched, can I put this work that I bought online in my newsletter? And the official answer is no. You own the work, you don't own the right to put it online, you don't own the right to show it. You actually have to contact the maker to ask permission or pay them. So I can completely understand this feeling like, but I want to show what I like and what I have. So this going digital, I understand. All right, we have to wrap it up. I mean, what is the area? What are the types of companies or brands or industries that you feel are most likely to really, really make this happen, or to really be able to play with this in a way that makes sense?
I mean, yes, I think as much as it's complex and still emerging, I think there are clearly huge opportunities for brands, especially potentially marketers and community builders, to leverage this trend in 2022 and just and beyond, and just have some fun with it. I mean, you know, people are very interested in this space right now. So what if you know, built a little DAO and invited people into it and gave them limited edition NFTs to be a membership of this decentralized community, and then they started to give you useful information back about your business, about your brand. You know, you cultivated a relationship with these people, and the way that you will draw them into a decentralized community is by, exactly as I said in the talk, allowing them to show status through it. You know, so allowing them to all collaborate with one another on a creative project that they can then show to the world and that makes them look good. Or selling virtual objects, you know, partner with someone like Artifact and create virtual objects that people can wear in augmented reality and put the picture on Instagram and say, I have these amazing limited edition Reebok, you know, sweatshirts as an NFT. You know, it's just the same behavior that we've always seen out on the street. You know, people want to wear the right clothes, they want to drive the right car, they want to have amazing holidays and have amazing experiences that they'll put on their Instagram. They'll want to do all that in virtual worlds too now, and online too. And if you can bring communities together, in a decentralized communities together that allow people to do that, it's a winning play, I think, for 2022 for, you know, all kinds of brands, fashion brands, music brands, anyone who's working at the intersection of like physical products and status, I think, or like creative works and status.
It's a fantastic creative time, that's for sure.
Yes.
Well, David, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great, and I can't wait to hear what our other speakers have to say about all the topics they're going to talk about too.
Super interesting stuff, I assure you.
Thank you so much for this fascinating conversation, and also thank you for watching this episode. If you don't want to miss any of our future seasons, please simply subscribe to our newsletter on nextconf.eu. Finally, I'd like to thank our partners, Accenture, Factor 3 and T3N for their support.